the thing with that kind of work is that you never really know whether you're making what kind of difference you make. There's no way of really quantifying it. So I was just looking for a year off. I was going to plan to go back to my work. I just wanted a year out as a break, so I picked an easy course, which was called Communications Diploma. And when I got there, I didn't realize that you had to make something, so I made a drama documentary about the only three things I knew anything about. One was the Spanish Civil War, the other was football, and the other was a political dispute in England about the miners' strike in the 1980s. And I had a producer. My tutor was a very famous documentary maker who watched my thing and said, "This is what I should do." So I never went back to my job as a social worker. There's always challenges. There's knowing whether you're good enough to do it, knowing whether you've got a story that anybody else wants to listen to, knowing whether you're ever going to be brave enough to take the chance to jump off a cliff. Raymond Bradbury, who's a famous science fiction writer, came up with this quote, which is, "You jump off a cliff and you build your wings on the way down." That applies to life, but certainly to filmmaking. Every job is like that. Well, I grew up watching Alan Clarke's films on television, a very strong sort of social realist tradition in England. They were kind of plays on television. They were always about people whose lives we didn't ever really see much. People whose lives were generally forgotten, I thought. But there always seemed to be people that I knew. So that was kind of interesting. I liked them because I always felt like they weren't stories about middle-class people or rich people or dead people. They were people who were alive and living now. And they were always people who were on the edge of something, who were in some sort of, whose lives were difficult. But he managed to create extraordinary stories of hope in the midst of all that pain and suffering. So I kind of liked that, I guess. I enjoyed that. And Costa-Gavras and Gillies Pontecorvo, I guess, for me, would be the cinema that I've loved the most, because it's about character as action. They seem to manage to. The story is told through action. There's not lots of expositional dialogue. It's very tense, but you're seeing something very true. But also, I'd say, Paul Greengrass made a big difference to my career. He really supported me at a time when I'd made a jump from television into movies with Omagh. There's no difference. One is you sit in the dark watching it with a bunch of strangers, and the other you sit at home with someone you love. No difference. That's the difference. I don't see any difference in the way you make it. When I make something, I don't go, it's just for television or it's a film, so I'm going to do it differently. That's just the way people are going to view the story. The motivation is to make it as good as you can be. My job as a director is I generally direct things that other people have written. All the things I've made so far have been films that other people have scripted. So I see a duty to try and find a way to tell the story that's the story that the writer conceived in their head, and that my job is to make it even better than they ever imagined it could be. And that's how I see it, really. It starts with the word. That's the inspiration for me, and my job is to be as truthful to that as I can be and make it fly in a way that hopefully the writer will go, "Wow, that's even better than I ever could have imagined." That's what I look at when I start a job.